welcome to the Cool Crone. I'm Colleen Pearl, and I will be your astrologer for this video, all about the full moon in Pisces, a supermoon, on August 30th, 2023. The full moon will take place on August 30th at 9:35 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time at 7 degrees Pisces, 24 minutes. Now, if you're east of the eastern United States, this may be taking place on August 31st. So be sure to check to make sure that you know which day the full moon is taking place for you. This supermoon in Pisces is a very powerful lunation. Because of the sensitivity of Pisces, almost everyone will be in their feelings as the supermoon looms over us. It will be very interesting when it comes to people getting along and diplomacy. Diplomacy is still a theme this month as the planets are aligning for us to negotiate something important and world-changing. I would say that all three lunations this month will have an impact on how we are seen on the world stage as far as peacekeepers for the planet. On the one hand, we'll handle things with confidence and optimism. On the other, we may doubt our abilities and almost blow it. There will be high emotions going on during this moon, which will need to be managed carefully. I believe we can do this, and I believe the outcome will be for the highest good. Now, the full moon in Pisces is feminine. She's a water sign. She's mutable. She's ruled by the modern planet Neptune, but traditionally ruled by the planet Jupiter. Now, the sign of Pisces is extra sensitive. They can be sensitive to energies of people, of medicines, of food, of the world around them, of plants, of animals. Pisces are just very, very sensitive. The sign Pisces is very sensitive. Wherever you have Pisces in your chart is probably where you are the most sensitive. Now, you may feel intuitive feelings in this area of your life, or you may just be a person who has to protect themselves from outside energies in this area of your life. Now, on the time of the full moon, everybody will be a little bit moon in Pisces. Now, my daughter has her moon in Pisces, and while she's a very strong person, she is very, very sensitive about a great many things. Now, at the time of the full moon, the moon and the sun stand across from each other in the sky, the sun sending its beams towards the moon, and the moon reflecting those beams back. We are in the middle usually on Earth, and so we feel the impact of the lunar and solar beams very strongly at the time of the full moon. This is why people say that the energy of the full moon is the most powerful. The energy at the time of the full moon is really the best time for doing magic, if you are so inclined. The yin and yang energy between the sun and the moon also is powerful for helping you to deal with unresolved issues. The moon and the sun and all of their beams bouncing all over the place shine a light on the darkness of your heart and soul. So it's a great time to be letting go of negative patterns and toxic thoughts. It's also a great time to be releasing the wasted emotions of guilt, fear, jealousy, and disappointment. And although I say this every month, you may be wondering what it really means to get rid of those emotions. And I would direct you towards the writing and teachings of Louise Hay. These are the emotions that she identified as being totally wasteful when it comes to the enlightenment and the evolvement of the human soul. Let's look now at the planetary aspects on this full moon in Pisces. The first aspect we have is the Sun trining Virgo. Sun will be at 7 degrees Virgo, 25 minutes, trining Jupiter at 15 degrees Taurus, 32 minutes. This brings confidence and optimism for all of us, as well as a lust for travel, the exotic, for learning and gaining new experiences. Next, we have the Sun opposing Saturn in Pisces. Sun will be at 7 degrees Virgo, 25 minutes, opposing Saturn at 3 minutes Pisces, 33 retrograde. Here we find the glass half empty versus the glass half full crowds. It all depends upon your point of view. If you always see yourself as a winner, you'll like this one. If you don't, you won't. Then we have the moon at 7 degrees Pisces 24, conjunct Saturn at 3 degrees Pisces 33 retrograde. While this brings about stability and honesty, it can also make one feel ashamed or depressed about themselves. Also, it can make one behave in an aloof manner. Feelings may be displaced and expressed inappropriately, and because we are in a very, very sensitive, highly impressionable sign like Pisces, it will be more so. So I just want to let people know who may have sensitive degrees in their chart that you should be looking at all the mutable sign planets or points in your chart that are from about 3 degrees all the way up to 11 or 12 degrees of those mutable signs, especially if you have things in Pisces. That's where you're really going to be hit with the possibility of some negative feelings from Saturn. Then we also have Mercury trining Jupiter. Mercury is at 19 degrees Virgo, 17 minutes, trining Jupiter at 15 degrees Taurus, 32 minutes. And this brings about optimism, kindness, openness, travel calls to you, even if you can't afford it. So we have a couple of aspects already that are leaning you towards taking a trip or wanting to take a trip and learning new things and gaining new experiences because of the involvement of Jupiter. So maybe that Saturn influence won't be too bad. The next aspect we have is Venus squaring Jupiter. Now we've had a trine to Jupiter from the Sun, which is probably more powerful than the square from Venus, but nevertheless, Venus and Jupiter, which are the two benefics, stand at 90 degrees to one another, which is a square. And this means that something is going to give. You are going to be put into a situation that is demanding. People in general will be very emotionally demanding. And given that the moon is in the squishy sign of Pisces, that demand can get pretty high. The Scarlett O'Hara quotient will be really off the charts today, so bring your patience and your sense of humor, just don't direct it towards her. And the next is Mars in Libra opposing Neptune in Pisces. Now, Libra and Pisces are not in opposition, but Mars is at 2 degrees Libra 15, and Neptune is at 26 degrees Pisces 47 retrograde. And so they are still about 5 degrees away from each other, but they're counting it as an opposition anyway because Neptune is a pretty strong planet, and this moon is in Pisces, which is ruled by Neptune. So the opposition to Mars is really important. And we also had this same opposition at the new moon, which was about 2 weeks before. Now, this can give rise to amazing flights of fantasy and works of imagination. So if you're a designer or an artist, this is a great aspect, and you shouldn't worry at all. This is great. If you're not an artist or a designer, I'm sorry. With Neptune, we have a tickle of war that seems to come out of nowhere. But of course, we know that things leading to war are things that fester for months, if not years. Now, Neptune is often a harbinger of war for the U.S., so this one worries me a little bit. This could be the spark of a military engagement. And even if the U.S. is on the periphery of this conflict, I'm worried that it may last for a long time. Neptune is retrograde, so it would cause a longer time for Neptune to be going over those degrees. Now, Neptune has been involved with the beginnings of pretty much every conflict and war we have ever been engaged in this country. So, but this aspect now is going to be gone in a couple of days, and it has been here all of the month of August and part of or most of the month of July as well. And then we have Mars in Libra, trining Pluto and Capricorn. Mars will be at 2 degrees Libra 15, trining Pluto at 28 degrees Capricorn 15. Diplomacy efforts and any type of negotiating will be tough but fair. Pluto in Capricorn will hold the line on the most extreme demands, and Mars in Libra will bargain shrewdly towards getting what they want. This is a great time to come to the table if you want to drive a hard bargain, and the stars are with you. Then we have two aspects that I'm bringing together. Uranus is trining Pluto. Neptune is sextiling Pluto. So these are both positive aspects, but these are involving the big, bad, nasty boys of the zodiac. So this is pretty important. And remember that Uranus is retrograde, as is Neptune and Pluto. So the whole conglomeration is retrograde, but these are sleeping mean giants. So beware. Now, this is the same aspect that we had at the previous full and new moon. So this has lasted a while. And mainly the reason it's lasting so long is because A, they're all retrograde and moving slow, and B, they just move slow in general anyway. So remember last month when I said that the world was shifting? Well, that involved Pluto as well. So we're in an extraordinary moment on Earth when we can set in motion a whole new trajectory for humankind. There will be many advocate warriors now, like Jack Smith, for instance, who are committed to changing things for the better. Better environmental laws, better gun laws, better human rights laws, etc., and many, many more. There will be significant progress, actually, in this area. And could it be that we see something profound, deep, and fair brought about by our esteemed Congress? Probably not, as I believe they're on recess, but you never could tell. You could be optimistic. It could also relate to a fair ruling of some other court case that is important to the public. So there's lots of ways that this can play out, and this is a long-lasting aspect, so it isn't pertaining to one particular day or just this particular full moon, but it is involved with this full moon. So the full moon could act as a trigger for all of these things to come together. All right, the next aspect is Neptune sextiling Pluto, and this is the one that we just talked about. Now, Neptune sextile Pluto has been going on for months and months and months, most of 2023, probably all of 2023. And this is the aspect that has given Biden the upper hand because this connects very nicely with his chart. And it's a peacemaking aspect. It connects with other planets to enhance peace building and transformative actions on a global scale. So really, really good to have this aspect in force for so long. So do you see what I'm talking about here? We in the U.S. are on the precipice of changing the world. We are feeling a lot of confidence, but also a tremendous amount of anxiety about the outcome of our actions. It's been a while since the U.S. was truly called upon to shape the world, but once again, we are going to do it, and the way we shape things could have ramifications for decades to come. And also, within our country, we will be taking steps to ensure a more peaceful future and better prosperity for our citizens. Our diplomats will be dealing with tricky situations and tricky world leaders. Lots of emotions will be involved, but I think in the end we will pull it out of the hat. Why do I say that? Because Joe Biden is at our helm, and he is the most experienced statesman we have ever seen in our history. I'm talking shades of Franklin Roosevelt and Abraham Lincoln, both of whom were savvy politicians and terrific statesmen. The negotiations that are made now will be inspired, creative, democratic, and ultimately a win-win for those involved. In other words, a genius move that has the potential to correct a bunch of mistakes and wrap them up in a big red bow. All right, now let's move on to predictions for all the signs. First up is Aries. Aries, this full moon is going to fall in your 12th house. So while you're used to your Pisces self being a little bit tucked away and not being seen by the public very often, with this full moon, I'm afraid things are going to come out in the open. Saturn is going to be there, agitating and creating a little bit of anxiety having to do with things that you normally keep hidden. So you may find yourself blurting out things that you don't want people to know just because you're very nervous about it. So be forewarned, Aries. This moon is going to leave you feeling a little out of control where it comes to your emotions. The Saturn quotient is going to make you feel restricted. So some of you may feel like you can't speak at all or you can't express your emotions at all, and that's no good. But others of you will have this kind of spasmodic reaction to, I can't stand it anymore, like it'll just come flying out of your mouth. The sun is going to be in your 6th house, so most of you will probably just try to bury yourself in work and try to not, try to just ignore all the emotional stuff that's going on, because as an Aries rising person, you probably feel like you have a certain image and people don't think of you that way, and why do you want them start thinking that you have this weakness or whatever. So it's just going to be a little tricky moon for you. I think anytime somebody has the moon, the full moon especially, going across their 12th to 6th house axis, it always is the kind of conflict that makes one fairly uncomfortable, just because most of us are not used to dealing with all of that 12th house stuff all the time. And the 12th house is where things stay hidden. It's the house of self-sabotage. It's the house of your subconscious and your dreams. It's the house of people who are living at a great distance, who are kind of forgotten. It's the house of anybody in general in your life who is forgotten, like somebody in prison or somebody in long-term care in a hospital or somebody who lives in a religious order. You're just not communicating with those people on a daily basis, and so you tend to not think about them very much. Not that they're totally forgotten, but you just don't think about them all the time. So Pisces, or Aries, I do think this Pisces moon is going to be a little bit uncomfortable for you. And now I'm going to move on to Taurus. Okay, Taurus, so for you, this Pisces full moon is falling in your 11th house, with the moon in the 11th house and the sun in the 5th house in the sign of Virgo. So Virgo is a happy place for you. That's a sister sign, another earth sign. So in that respect, you'll be feeling very good about everything having to do with this full moon. Even with Saturn there sitting on top of the moon during the lunation, you will still be able to enjoy the full moon. Now, your 11th house is the house of fun and hopes, dreams, and wishes, and groups that you're a part of and people that you enjoy being around. With Saturn there, one of two things could happen. You may suddenly find yourself very anxious about being around other people, or you may find that you're taking on a great deal of responsibility with that group. Like all of a sudden you may be asked to, manage the next event or something. So it's one of two ways that it can play out, Taurus. And given your very solid personality and your strength, I would say it's probably the latter. It's probably that you're going to be imposed upon to take on some responsibility with some groups that you're a part of, and that you're going to feel like you won't be able to enjoy things as much as if you were just another guest at the event. Now, the sun being in your 5th house during this lunation means that it's going to be emphasizing children or games of chance or fun or love affairs. And so you will have some fun with that. But again, you may have some responsibility that creeps in and makes you feel a little constrained, like you can't really kick up your heels. You can't really let your hair down. You have to always be on watch and be responsible. That's not a very bad thing. If you listen to the other people's predictions, you'll find that that's going to be one of the more positive ways that Saturn is going to work with this full moon. All right, so moving on to Gemini. Gemini, this full moon is falling across your 10th to your 4th house axis. The 10th house is going to find Saturn and the moon, and that means a couple of things. The moon is really happy in the 10th house. That's where you get great public acclaim, great public acknowledgement, acceptance. You understand the public, they understand who you are, popularity, and there's a great sense of popularity there. So I'm not too worried about the moon being in your 10th house, and that would normally mean that you would possibly even receive some sort of a bonus or reward. But with Saturn there, what it means is that what the bonus that you're going to receive is going to be responsibility. There's going to be some constraints. There's going to be responsibility. There's going to be maybe somebody has to step down for some reason, a health reason or whatever, and you have to step in unexpectedly. So this puts a little crimp in what you were really hoping to do. Now it is going across to your fourth house, so it is going to have an impact on your family life, your domestic situation, your possibly even on your spouse, because this extra responsibility is going to mean that you take some energy away from your domestic life. So in that respect, Saturn is going to be a little bit of a downer, but it's not going to be too bad, Gemini, if it puts you out in the public, which you love, and taking over for someone else or taking on responsibility for something else in your career. It's probably the right time in your career for that to happen, so I don't think it's going to be too awful, Gemini, but it is going to mean that whatever those kudos are, in the next breath, they're going to say, so now you got to run this department or something, so you could see it as a very positive thing. And then again, you could see it as, ugh, I can't take my vacation in September, something like that. All right, now let's move on to Cancer. And Cancer, for you, this moon is falling across your 9th to your 3rd house. So the moon and Saturn will be in your 9th house, meaning that things that you want to get going as far as travel or publishing or putting things on the internet or being involved with the space program or space or astronomy in general, either gets put on hold, either there's a little delay there from Saturn, or there are so many restrictions and constraints that you really have to jump through hoops to get things going. So one of two situations could play out for you, Cancer, with the moon there. Also, it could mean that you're doubting yourself a great deal with Saturn sitting on top of the full moon in the 9th house. You could be thinking, oh, my education isn't enough, or my background isn't enough, or I didn't prepare for this quite in the right way. Because you are ruled by the moon, Cancer, of course, any water sign moon is going to impact you tremendously. Now, the sun being in your 3rd house means that you can certainly take steps to beef up that portfolio or the resume or the credentials if you need to. It gives you actually a lot of energy in that direction. So keep your eyes open. If you are feeling a little anxious about your qualifications for doing this thing, you can always beef it up with, new credentials or a new license or taking a class or something like that. Okay, so now we're going on to Leo. So Leo, the moon is falling along with Saturn into your 8th house, and the sun will be in your 2nd house. So this means that the sun is going to be stirring up your house for money, resources, talents, skills, and how you get a paycheck. That's all good news. With the moon and Saturn in the 8th house, I'm afraid that could mean something of a bit of a downer. So the moon in the 8th house usually means that especially your partner and you need to look at your plans for the future as far as security goes, and that you need to maybe make changes in them. And that could still be the case. But with Saturn there, this could mean that there is a change that is not very welcome. It could mean a separation of some kind from money. So it could mean that you have to pay a big payout for something. It could mean that somebody passes, that you get an inheritance, and then that inheritance is all encumbered and you have to take responsibility for getting it unencumbered. It could mean that there's just plain a delay in some sort of a money payout kind of thing, and not like a paycheck delay. But with the 8th house, we're talking about big money. We're talking about inheritance or insurance payouts or mortgages or home equity loans or your 401k or something like that. So it's large sums of money that Saturn is just going to kind of put the brakes on. Now, it doesn't mean that it will never come through. It means that Saturn is going to make you work even harder for it and be more responsible about it. So that's what the moon Saturn thing is going to mean for you, Leo, in the 8th house. Now, in the 2nd house, like I said, with the sun there, it could mean that you're feeling like, oh, well, I'll just figure out another stream of income. I'll do Airbnb or something to bring in income, or I'll go, sell something, or I'll work part-time somewhere. You could feel like you have to bring in a second stream of income to balance this restriction from Saturn and the moon in the 8th house. But most likely this is pretty short-lived. It's not necessarily going to be a big thing that goes on unless you have other planets in your chart that support this and they have sensitive degrees to this actual full moon, because it is a pretty powerful full moon with Saturn right there on it. All right, so we're going to move on to Virgo. Okay, Virgo, for you, the full moon falls in your 7th house with the sun in your 1st house. So this is going to feel like a very happy full moon for you, even with the Saturn moon conjunction in your 7th house. What you're going to find is that your partner has needs, which they always do when it's a full moon in Pisces for you. Your partner has needs that maybe require a more extraordinary means to take care of them. This means that your responsibility, your burden, your constraint in regards to your partner is moved up to another level. So it could be that you're just very worried about your partner. It could be that your partner, say, has a need, like maybe they're going through physical therapy, learning how to move their legs again or move their hands again or something, and you're going to have to be very much involved. Or maybe they're all of a sudden confined to a wheelchair. I mean, it doesn't have to be that dramatic. It could just be that there's more responsibility towards the partner that comes about and is exposed and acknowledged and discovered and talked about during this full moon. So you're a service sign, Virgo. So being called into service in the name of your partner is probably not the worst thing in the world. It's something that you're probably happy to do to help them out. Now the sun is in your 1st house, so you're going to be, getting a lot of gratitude from your partner and a lot of kudos from people all around you who see that with this service mentality, you're really the perfect person to help your partner out. And again, I'm not saying for sure your partner's going to have some sort of debilitating thing. It could be something else that causes, I hate to use the word burden, but burden is a Saturn word, that there is going to be some sort of burden or worry or anxiety about your partner that you're going to have to deal with. So that's the gist of it, Virgo, and kind of feel like I just keep saying the same thing here. So I'm going to wrap that up there, and I'm going to move on to Libra. Okay, Libra, this puts the full moon in your 6th house and the sun in your 12th house. This means that the focus for you with the moon and Saturn is going to be on work, your everyday routine, and your health. So it could be that some sort of a health thing comes to view, comes to mind, becomes exposed during this full moon, and that you have to restrict things somewhat. So you may find that you have to cut out a certain food, or you may have to stop laying around on the couch, or you may have to stop running. Say you're a runner and you find that the running is causing like shin splints or something, that you have to cut down on that. So something is going to have to be eliminated or reduced or constrained or confined, having to do with your health or your job or your daily routine. It could be that there's just road work going on the way you usually drive to work and you have to take a different way to work. It could be that in your job you have to take on the burden of somebody who's out on a disability or something. It doesn't have to be a health-related issue, but it could be. Now, with the sun in your 12th house, you're going to find that you're much more curious about your dreams and your more subconscious thoughts. So this may be a time where you decide that you want to go into therapy, or you may want to consult a specialist who can look at maybe past lives or something like that. So the 12th house is going to be where the sun is, where things are going to be illuminated. And the 12th house is your subconscious and dreams and people at a distance, and frankly, people who are somewhat forgotten in your life. Where the 6th house with the sun and Saturn, with that debilitating Saturn happening there, that's going to affect your work, your daily routine, your work life, and your health. All right, so let's move on now to Scorpio. And Scorpio, for you, this full moon is in your 5th house with the sun falling in your 11th house. So for the 5th house with the sun, with the moon and Saturn in your 5th house for this full moon, Scorpio, you're going to find that situations having to do probably with children, if you have children, are going to cause some sort of a separation or rift. So you could see, if it was just a separation, you could find out that, I mean, it could be a good thing. It could be that your child is going to take a summer next year and go to Spain, or they're going away to college or something like that. It could be a separation that is a positive, but of course you're going to miss them. Of course, you know, there's going to be an emotional component there where you're feeling like, oh, I really don't want them to go, but, you know, I'm happy for them to go. With Scorpio there on the 5th house, you also may be worried that someone's going to find out about a love affair that you had. I mean, the 5th house is about love affairs as well as games of chance and reckless behavior and children and things that are fun. So you could find that a vacation gets canceled, or you may find that, like I said, somebody may find out about something that you did, like it doesn't have to be a love affair. It could be, you know, some risky thing you did with the stock market or something like that. It's not going to be like you're discovered to have done insider trading. It's not going to be that big with the 5th house involvement. It's more that you are anxious about something, probably, Scorpio. And you also, Scorpio, I think, are one of the rare signs that when Saturn constrains you or takes something away, separates you from something, or delays something, I don't think that you see it the way other signs do. There's a part of you that's so serious. And I think you kind of respect Saturn's energy, and you kind of feel like, yeah, you know, I figured something like that would happen at some point. So I don't see that this full moon is going to be in any way a negative moon or a downer. I see that you're going to feel like, yeah, it's probably going to happen, and it's happening now. So probably more along the lines of like a child going away for a long trip or college or something like that, rather than anything too nefarious. And with the sun in the 11th house, you're going to find that your friends gather around you. The groups that you're a part of really buoy you. They support you. So it's going to be a pretty good moon for you. And it is a water sign moon as well, just like it was for Cancer. So it's not going to be too horrible. It's just going to be something that, that's life. I just have to deal with that. All right. So let's move on to Sagittarius. Okay, Sagittarius. So this puts the moon and Saturn in your 4th house when we have the full moon, meaning that the sun is in your 10th house. So unfortunately for you, Sag, you're one of the signs that this is going to be a tough full moon, because the sun is in your 10th house. You're doing great with your career. Things are going well. It seems you're just on the upward trajectory, and you could do no wrong, basically. But for your domestic life, for your domestic situation, and within your family, there's going to be more burden or worry and anxiety about problems of some kind. And those problems could also have to do with, that you suspect that there's going to be a bigger burden coming along, or something is being restricted, or there's a separation. Maybe you're having to move or lose your house for some reason, or maybe you're losing a member of your family, or, some kind of a burden or worry or constriction or constraint having to do with your domestic situation that's really highlighted during this full moon. You're going to be very needy about that area, so anything to do with your family or your domestic situation is going to be difficult for you. So it is going to be a rough couple of days, I think, Sag. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. It's just that there's going to be some things that come up that you have to deal with, and you're going to have to balance that against how great things are going in your career. So that's what this full moon is about. And now I'm moving on to Capricorn. All right, Capricorn. So for you, the moon and Saturn are in the 3rd house, and the sun is in the 9th house. So for you, great dreams of traveling abroad, or launching a new website, or doing something having to do with foreign countries, foreign cultures, publishing a book, going going great guns. All of that is going great, great, great. And in the third house, you're going to have your restrictions and anxieties. So the moon coupled with Saturn usually means a separation, a delay, a constriction, a constraint of some kind, where you're not really getting what you need or what you want from that area of life. And in this case, the area of life has to do with siblings, neighbors, your everyday life, your everyday surroundings, meaning your community. It could mean also something that references back to your childhood or childhood education and your desire to learn. So it could be that you are not able to teach or take that class that you wanted to. It could be that your communications and needs and responsibilities having to do with your siblings or your neighbors are constrained in some way, or there's a burden in some way, or there's a separation in some way. These are all the things that Saturn will bring, and especially when it brings it with the moon, we feel it very keenly. And that's why this full moon is going to be important for a lot of people. All right, so that's the basic gist of it, Capricorn. Good luck with this moon. It is a very emotional moon. That's also something that you are not very comfortable with most of the time. So best of luck to you, and just hang in there. It's only a few days. It's just one full moon. All right, so let's move on now to Aquarius. Aquarius, this full moon is happening in your second house. The moon and Saturn are going to be in your second house, which means the sun's going to be in your eighth house. So the good news is that for you and your partner and the joint resources, things are great. Things are very, very happy. The sun is shining on it. You could even be getting a payout of some kind having to do with eighth house matters, like an insurance payout, or the ending of a lawsuit with a big payout, or a payout from some, like an inheritance or something. So there could be a payout of some kind that's happening to you, or you could just resolve some issues with you and your partner about setting up your investment portfolio for your retirement, something like that. So in the meantime, the moon and Saturn are in your second house, which means that there will be some difficulties with probably the paycheck, or getting work, or keeping work, or wanting to start new work. This is going to be difficult. So Saturn brings about separation. So it could be separation from the paycheck. It could be separation from a person who gives you a paycheck. It could be constraint or structures that are burdensome. So something like that around your second house, where your second house is your earning capacity. It's also your talents, your resources. So you could find that, say you're a very talented artist and you're planning on getting, some training with a big maestro in your field. It could be that that's delayed. It could be that the maestro has, some health problems, or has to deal with something in his own life and he can't just do it right now, and you have to delay it. So it could be just a delay. It could be an outright separation where you never get to do what you're going to do. I don't know. So for those of you who have points and planets that are sensitive to this moon, which is 7 degrees Pisces, so in the early degrees of the mutable signs, then that's going to be difficult. Also, because the mutable signs are going to square this moon, so that's going to make it harder. Now, Aquarius, you do not square it, but you could have planets that are either in Pisces or that are in other signs, mutable signs, that square this moon and make it that much more difficult. All right, moving on to Pisces. Pisces, this full moon is happening in your first house to your seventh house. So the sun's going to be in your seventh house, so your partner's doing great. You and your relationship is doing great. No worries on that front, and you should be enjoying that relationship a great deal during this full moon. With the moon and Saturn in your first house, usually that takes the form of anxiety or embarrassment or even shame about one's physical appearance and the way one presents oneself to the world, perhaps even your reputation. So that's the kind of thing that you're going to be looking at, Pisces, during this full moon. You know, did I say the wrong thing to this person? Do they not like me because I have red hair? Or, you know, did I not make the grade because, you know, I didn't get braces or something? Something to do with your physical appearance or your image of the world you may have doubts about. Saturn is going to bring about restrictions, separations, constraints, and structure. So it could be that you decide to get braces. You could be 45 years old and decide, hey, I think I need to really fix my teeth. I think that's going to mean a lot to me in my career. Then go and get your teeth fixed. There's lots of ways of having that done these days that are really kind of discreet and unnoticeable. But something about your presentation to the world is going to be something that you decide either is not up to snuff or you really need to work on it. And that's how I see the full moon impacting you. You're going to be uber emotional, of course, because it is a full moon. Everybody's going to be a little uber emotional. But for you, Pisces, putting this moon right in your first house with your rising sign, that just means that it's going to be easy for you to cry. So carry a lot of tissues with you, you know, and figure out what you're going to do about your teeth. Okay, there we go. All right, Pisces, please leave me a note in the comments. If you have something specific that you want me to look at, I can certainly try to do that, although keep in mind that I don't have your full chart to look at. But I don't want you to feel that I'm just, you know, blowing it off for you guys. But I do see that Saturn with the moon very often causes anxiety or shame. And it's a difficult aspect to work with. Now, for you guys, it's just happening over the course of the full moon, so just a few days, less than 3 days. But the manifestation for you is coming in your first house, which is your image, the way you look, the way you present yourself to the world, what people see when you walk into the room for the first time, the impression that you make. So that's what's going to be impacted when you have the moon in your first house, but also, or transiting your first house like the full moon, but also it's coupled with Saturn and it's in opposition to the sun. So there's just lots and lots and lots of emphasis on this that is out of your control. All right, so that is the windup of all of the 12 signs for this second full moon in the month of August. I'm so glad that you watched to the end. I hope you enjoyed my little synopsis readings there for all the signs. And I have finally gotten past 3,000 subscribers. I think we announced in July the winner of that contest to get a free natal reading. If you would like a reading with me, please see the information in the description box. Thank you so much for being a subscriber. Thank you to everybody who's watching this video. Love and light to you guys, and I will see you next time.